So now what I want to do in this live stream is go through an idea that I had and want to investigate how we could build something together live on stream. For this, the goal is rather easy. We have a Visual Analytics report here, or let's close this down, actually open up our main report. This is our main SAS Visual Analytics report. And we want to version the content and how the report is built up over time. Now, how we do that, we can of course grab the actual content and the definition of its inputs using the Control-Alt-B diagnostics window, and then just copy and paste the code, the XML code from here into a file. That's a rather manual process. So the idea here is, can we automatically grab all of that content, save it into a file system, and then push it via Git so that we can version it, and then later on retrieve it to restore older generations of that report. So that's the idea here that we will be following along. And for that, I thought it would be cool to live code this into a custom step. But of course, first we also have to build out the whole logic to even do this. Now, to check on this, we can go to developer.sas.com, where we will be finding loads of API endpoints. In our case, we want to specifically be looking for the reports, visualization reports category, so we can filter down here on the left. And then we want to work with a report in our case. And on the right hand side, we can already see there is something that sounds very promising to me, and that's the report content one. And here we have two endpoints that again sound very promising. The first one is get report content, and then save report content. Let's look at the get report content first. We can see here, we can from report/reports, then we have to provide the UID of our report, and then content will give us that actual piece that we are interested in. And we can also choose if we want to have this as JSON or as an XML file. So we can work here however we want. Okay, so let's take a look at our report, and we can grab its ID by going to the copy link menu, say copy, and then if we just grab that URL and remove everything after the last %2f, which is just a encoding for the slashes, and then the endpoint advised us to go to /reports/reports, and then we're gonna dump in our UID that we just grabbed. And here we can see all the different endpoints, again, specifically for this. And we can see here this content piece that we want to be working with. Let's click on it, and we can directly see, okay, we are getting a whole bunch of actual XML content that we can be working with and make use of for our purposes. So what we then need to do is we either have to make a choice to say, give me the UID of your report, but what I actually find a much more interesting user experience is to say, hey, let's take the file name that we can get inside of SAS Studio, and let me actually close all of that out. Inside of SAS content, we can go to my folder, and here we have that car sales report. So what I actually want to do is to give an end user the ability to just select this car sales report and then have that as an input to my custom step, and then go ahead and grab all the content for the end user. So that would be the end goal. But let's first get started by introducing the ability to programmatically grab all the content from our report. As a starting point here, we will say, okay, let's say we have the report UID, and in our case, let me actually save that piece here. In our case, this was the UID, so let's grab that and let's save that into a macro variable. And now we are going to go ahead and say we want to create an API request using proc HTTP. So I have saved myself a snippet to do that, but we will be walking through this code line by line for the first time, and then as we move on, you will get familiar with this. So we have, first up, we are grabbing the URL of our SAS Via environment dynamically, meaning we can easily switch between different environments. Then we create a temporary output for our file, which will be very useful to save out the actual content of our report. And then we come into proc HTTP. First up is our URL. So let's go ahead and say report/reports. And then we're gonna put our report UUID/content. Yep. We have a GET request. We want to output it to our temporary file name. Then this OAuth bearer equals SAS services. That is our authentication mechanism that is available inside of SAS Studio. And then we have the headers piece to say accept application/JSON. So let's take a look here. If we specify, for our case, application accept application, and then let's grab that we want to have JSON back from it. So let's override the accept piece here to use the proper accept header from SAS Studio. Next up is we will be checking the response. This is done by grabbing the implicit proc HTTP variable behind the scenes that will allow us to check the status code and then abort if it's the wrong endpoint essentially, or if the status doesn't match 200, then we grab our output and turn it into a SAS library just so we can take a cursory glance at it. So let's run all of that right now. And we can see here the note request was successful. That's great. So we should have a new library available to us called out. And it has a bunch of different stuff as would be expected. So let's just open up the root one just so we can get a kind of cursory understanding of the top level content here. We can see sales report, and let's also quickly open up all data. This is a big table that destructured all of that. Okay, that is looking actually quite good, but what I'm more interested in here isn't necessarily to interact with it in a programmatic fashion from the SAS side. Rather, I want to actually save this to the file system. So let us go ahead and open up the SAS server pane, navigate to wherever you want to save this to. I'm just gonna click this content folder and say copy path, paste that in here, and I'm gonna call this car sales report.json. So let's rerun our proc HTTP script. And now we got our JSON report. We can open it up and we can see our report here. It's all in one line. So let's format that by clicking here. And now we can see, okay, this is looking really cool. We can find all of the information from our VA report. And let's actually go ahead, copy this. Let's go into Visual Analytics and just sanity check that what we are doing is correct. So again, I'm gonna hit Control-Alt-B to bring up that window. We went with JSON in this example, so let's remove everything from here and paste in what we got from our API request. Gonna hit save here, just so I also have it as a TXT file, and let's hit load. And it's the exact same report, so that's perfect. We were able, we were able to pull out the exact same source for our report that we had before, and now we keep building on top of that. So we now know how we can get, let's remove the JSON. We now know how to get the actual content of our file and also save it to a JSON file on our file system. Meaning if we have the report UUID, we would be done now. But sadly, we could do this, but that would require a lot of information that we get from the end user. And I think we can do a bit better. So let's shelve this code for now. Just gonna comment all of it out. And now we want to instead say we have a report path. And that is what we get when we go back to SAS content and we click copy path here. This is what we will be working with. Now, what we will need to do is we need to find this report. There is kind of two options that we could take here. The first one would be if we take this and we go to the reports, the general reports endpoint. What we could do here is we could add a modifier to the URL to add a filter, and we say something like equals name, and then we put the name in quotes, hit that, and we get our report back. Now, the issue with this approach is that there could be a bunch of reports named the same thing as long as they are not in the same folder, meaning we then would get back a bunch of different reports. But this would be if you can guarantee uniqueness of names in the whole environment, which I would never rely on, this could be a way of doing that. So let's assume we can't do this. We need to find a way to navigate through this folder path to then go down into the car sales report. Okay, for that, let's go back to our REST APIs and take a look for both the files endpoint and the folders endpoint. And let's see what we can find here. So for files, is there something about get file resources for multiple parent URIs? No, we don't want that. For a given file, no. Is there anything? Well, let's search the page for path. There's nothing here. Is there something here? Get a folder with a path or a child URI. Okay, that sounds interesting. So we have folder/folders at item. Get a folder with a resource wildcard. Either a path or a child URI is required. The result must be exactly one matching folder. Okay. So we can say path. Yeah, we can say path in the URL. So let's try this out. Let's copy our base URL here and say first folders/folders to see that endpoint and just how it's structured in general. Okay, so here we see our folder, and let's shrink down these pieces. We do not see the add item piece here, so let's try that add item. And then it told us to put path. And what did it tell us? The slash delimited path to a folder. So we say path equals, and we use this piece here. And boom, there we go. We now have the path. We now have the ID of that folder. Okay, with that, we can go ahead and search for the members in this piece. So let's open it up in a new URL, and we can see my folder has 91 members. But now the good piece is here, within one specific folder, we know that this folder will only have the ability to have one report named this piece. So we should be able now to say equals, I'm gonna say filter equal name, and then car-sales-report. And now we only get one piece back. Now what could happen still is that you would find an element in here that isn't a report. So we also see this content type. So let's, in addition to equals, we are going to say an AND filter. And we have our first condition, and then we have our second condition, where we're gonna say the content type should be report. Okay, I apparently made a mistake here. Let's see. The filter is not valid. Okay, that filter is not valid. So let's check. Let's remove the AND filter first, so we can make sure this is our piece here. So let's copy this URL, and instead of this piece here, we're going to say content type is report. Okay, perfect. We found 2 reports in this list. That is great. So we know the 2 filters work. So now we just need to find out what I did wrong with the filtering piece. So let's go back up to the files one, scroll up, go to the usage notes, and then jump down to filtering. Of basic filtering, we are doing something a bit more advanced than that. So let's see where we have an AND filter explained to us. And then we have a first condition, then we have a second condition. So I would have assumed that our example should have worked. So let's see if we see another example somewhere in here that could help us. Okay, I didn't see anything, but let's go ahead and say, okay, so this piece worked. Oh wait, no, let's go ahead and duplicate this one again. Then we are going to grab this equation, and we are going to say comma, make sure we make a closing run around that. We say and let's retry this. There we go. See, if you do things step by step, they usually work out, and don't hastily type them. So now we have our step-by-step process. First up, we are going to close this one out. The first thing we are doing is we have to go to folders/folders and then the path to our item. So let's take a look here. Right, we have the report path and then say report name. And here we have car-sales-report. And let's remove this from this piece. And let's soldier on. So now we want to be calling folder/folders at item path report path. That is the endpoint. So let's grab our proc HTTP example. Let's update the URL piece here for our new endpoint. We also have to say file name, and let's call this out TF for target folder. Let's make this also temporary. And then let's assign a lib name out TF JSON. And the cool thing about this is if you don't need to specify the file name, if you name the file and the library the exact same thing, SAS grabs that implicitly. So wait, we don't want a report content back this time. This time we are getting back application JSON. Yeah, let's just go with the generic one this time. So let's just replace that with application JSON. Let's run the whole piece here. Oh, physical file doesn't exist. That's interesting. Oh yeah, because I didn't put it into the file name in the out of the proc HTTP. So let's rerun this. And there we are. This time it worked. So let's take a look at our outtf library. And let's take a look at the root. Okay, we get our folder here, and this is the one that we are interested in, this specific ID. If you remember, this is this ID that we then use to jump into the members. So this piece here. So this time we want to go into folders/folders UID, which is called ID here, and then /members. Okay, so first up, let's grab that ID. Let's say proc SQL, and we're going to let's say no print. We don't want to see any of that, and I like to use camel case with these statements. And we are going to select ID into report parent folder ID, and then we're going to select from our outtf.root, and then let's just hit it with a run.quit, and let's actually also quickly put our variable here and say that into the log. Okay, let's hit run on this one. And we get our folder ID. So now we can soldier on. So we can get rid of all of these pieces. We are going to grab this piece again. But this time it's not a target folder, but now it's the target report. So let's rename this to outtr. And now we have folder/folders. We don't have item path anymore, but now we are going to grab our retrieved member ID, our folder ID. Then we're gonna say members, and then we're gonna say filter. Now comes in our big filter that we wrote. So let's grab that from up here. Let's paste it here. So we want to not have car sales data in here, but rather we will have our report name in here. And let's also put this into single quotes just so it looks nicer. Let's grab that and add it to our call. And we should be good to go. Wait, let's check application.json. We are getting members. I don't think we looked at the members endpoint yet. So let's go back, look at folders. It should be fine, but let's just be 100% on this. Yeah, application JSON, perfect. So we can even leave that in place. So let's now run this piece. Okay, that looks good. So now we have also an outtr library. Let's do all data. And here we can see we have our report coming in. Okay, so if we look at that endpoint here, we can see we have a bunch of content up top here that would be part of the root. Then we have the items, and there should only be one item in here because we are filtering for both a name and a content type. And if you filter for both of those, there can only be a name of a name has to be unique within a content type within a folder. So we are golden here now. So let's open up the items table. And here we can actually get this ID. And this ID, if we look at the endpoint, this ID here is an ID that we are not interested in, because we are actually interested in this URI. This is the ID of that report within the folder, meaning we could interact with it as if it were a file, but we want to interact with it as if it were a report, because it is a report. So we want this URI element. So let's go further, and there we are. We have our URI. So this is now the next variable we need to grab. So let's say we go into, let's copy our proc SQL again. But this time we don't want the ID, we want the URI, and we are going to say report URI. And this one is from tr items. And let's again just sanity put this to the log. Let's run this. Perfect. So now, remember, now we have the UID as well. Well, we can now, if we look at our code, we can actually update this because we are now a place ahead of this. So we now have the ability to, from the path of a report, we can now grab the contents and save them into a file. This is kind of, I would say, at least 50% of what we are trying to achieve, because what we in total want to do is also give the user the ability to then take content and re-upload it to the user's endpoint. Okay, so let's keep thinking about that. What we now want to do is, or actually let's finish this piece off, because what we saw here with our output file was that it put everything in a single line, which isn't ideal if it's not guaranteed that these pieces help us to grab everything into actual, that if you version, whoops, what we do here, this isn't the content anymore. Do we overwrite this at some point? Oh yeah, we did when we reran the example up top. So let's do that. Let's soldier on, and instead of the report UID, we're going to remove that. We are now going to be using our report URI. we leave the file name. We are going to replace this piece here with our report URI element. And then let's run that again. So it was successful, perfect, and let's open up the JSON. Now we have that again, but it's all in one line. So let's see if there is a way that we can use the file name to pretty up the JSON. So just looking through this, it doesn't look like there is anything in here that I can see. So let's search for SAS pretty print JSON. Okay, that brings us to proc.json. What's it? File name. Okay, there's something about data step. Let me quickly load the 2 documentation pages here. And let's take a look what we get. It's the libname gen engine. We worked with that one using the JSON pretty print data step function. Okay, the JSON pretty print data step function creates a readable copy of input JSON. Here's the syntax. JSON pp input file, output file. The input JSON. This can be a physical name or a file ref. That is incredibly useful. Perfect. So what we can do here, we don't want the lib name on it. So we have this piece. And then let's check that documentation again just to see. Okay, they still, you have to put in quotes. So we have our out. Let's see if we can actually overwrite the file with itself here. And I'm a fan of using single quotes when I'm using static text. So let's do that. And actually, let's be good citizens also up here and update this. Why am I saying that? I'm doing this because double quotes in strings inside of SAS mean that you could have a macro variable inside of it and it would get resolved like we do up here as an example. But down here, we are not resolving anything. So why would we even, why wouldn't we make that very obvious? So when you're scanning the code, it's more readable in that sense. So let's run this and see. File is in use. Okay, so you can't overwrite it with itself. So let's just do dash pretty. And let's do out p. So let's see if we can do that. Run. Okay, that worked. Let's refresh the folder here. Why is there nothing here? So it reportedly ran, right? But I don't see anything. Dash pretty. So it should be here. Let's refresh again. Nothing. Okay. Let's see the syntax help. On JSON pp. It doesn't appear to be anything down here. And this one, the test JSON, that's an older file. Yeah, thought so. Okay. Let's take a look at the example again. Read JSON from a URL file and pretty print it to disk. That is what I tried to do. Oh, let's jump to a more current SAS version, just to refer to the example again. there's a lot more information now. So JSON PP. Oh, see, where is it? There we go. So it's still the same example here. They still do it like that. Okay. Let's maybe also just jump to a newer SAS version here. Or did I? Yeah, I called it out P. Did I not assign both? Let me rerun this. I might have not assigned both. Is that the case? Yeah, as usual, the issue sits in front of the screen. This is looking beautiful. Nice. Okay, so now we have our content. Let's see, we don't actually want this temporary piece, so let's see if we can switch this to temp. Then we re-grab that, so let's clean up the files. We don't need those anymore. Let's close this out here, let's close this out, just a bit of cleaning, spring cleaning. We don't want XML. And then let's also delete this. Okay. So now back, rerunning everything. And, oh, sweet. Okay, so to summarize, we have the path and the report name as inputs. We then find the target folder. We filter that folder for only the item of our report name, and we are sure it's unique because we select for the content type being report. Then, as a next step, we grab the content of that report and we save it to a temporary file name. And then finally, we save it to an actual JSON file that is pre-printed, so it's very nice to version. This is awesome. Okay, so maybe here now is a good time to say, let's think about designing our custom step. What I want the custom step to be doing is to have two modes. One where you select the report, then select the output file where you want to save that JSON to, so you can version it in Git. So we require two inputs, and then it should also have an additional mode where you can take the JSON and upload it into a specific report. So we will get to that in a second. So let's start designing our custom step. Now, for this custom step, my intended goal is that it will be published on the SAS Studio custom step repository, so you can actually make use of this custom step if you are interested in using this custom step. In order to do that, we have a couple of guidelines that we need to be following, and there is code gen snippets, there's documentation, templates, so there's a couple of things that we can make work of. And the best thing to do is to download this template step from here and then follow the instructions and make work of it. So let's go in, and I actually preloaded the template step to my environment. I'm gonna hit edit, and our first item of action is to save as, and this time we are going to again save to my folder, and I like to put them in my custom step. And we are going to, let's see, it's always good to take a look at the different categories that are already in here to see if there's anything around reporting already in here. There's something around interacting with SAS content. Obtain folder URI, create folder, copy file from file system. Okay, we could do something like SAS content as a category. There's also Git. Maybe that's a good one to say, Git. But no, we are bringing the context. There's a extract VA report metadata step that can help you understand what's inside of a report. So there's different outputs. Let's take a look at one of the images. Don't know why they don't show up here. Yeah, okay. My browser seems to be blocking the images. Interesting. Okay, so it's extract VA report metadata. Oh, there is the EAC. It's external API call category. I also don't really like that. Should we potentially, because it's VA there, or Visual Analytics, and there is already another step, so maybe I can advocate for introducing a new category that is called VA to interact with Visual Analytics. So let's go with that assumption. Let's create a new custom step. We call it VA, and then we call it get report content. Let's save. So now we have copied the base template step. We don't need an input table. We do need a selection up top. That is okay. We don't need an output table. Don't think we will be needing a second page, so let's delete that. And we also have our about page. We'll come back to the about page here. So let's give a first description of our step. What I like to do is make sure that all of my stuff has unique names within here. So I always do an underscore, and then I use the initials of my step. So in this case, GRC for get report content. I'm gonna call this info text. And then the get report content custom step enables you to either retrieve the JSON content of a SAS Visual Analytics report and save it to the SAS server, or select a JSON content file from SAS server and update a SAS Visual Analytics report with it. Okay. So next up, we are going to have our GRC mode selector. Should we do this as a, is this a, yeah, let's do it like this. And then select interaction, select interaction mode. And then we are going to have two pieces in here. And I'm not actually going to say map values. We are going to say get content, and the label will be get report content, and then the other is update content, update report content, and we are actually going to delete the third choice. The default will be get report content, and we should actually, to follow the guidelines, we need to only capitalize the first word, or names, they should be accordingly. And then we are going to leave this, the default, that's all okay. Now, the next piece is we are going to add file selectors, and we need 4 in total. So the first one is GRC source report. Select the source report from SAS content. Let's put an example here, like public reports my first report, just so people get an idea what we have in there. We want this to be a file. Okay, then we are going to have the GRC target JSON, and now we're going to select the target JSON file from SAS server. Placeholder, I'll say something like export reports, and then my first report.json. Let's continue on. We have now GRC source JSON. Select the source JSON file from SAS server. And let's just copy this over. And then we are going to have our target report, and then we're going to select the target report from SAS content, and again pick up our folder. So now we need to make sure this is only visible and enabled depending on the selected value here. So we are going to pull this ID, and we're going to say visibility, and then we are going to put this in quotes equals, and we're going to say get content. And let's do the same here. And let's just quickly sanity check this by launching it. Okay, that doesn't seem to be right. So let's quickly check the documentation on how to build these dependencies. So we will be going into the SAS Studio documentation, where we can understand how to create these dependencies. Let's go to expression syntax, and we can see checkbox text field. So they should be equal, that should be fine. Column selector text field, drop down number field, so that should, oh, we forgot to put the $sign in front. There we go. See, it's usually the issue in front of the screen, as I keep saying. So let's just check. Let's go to launch. Perfect. So now we can update all of them. Whoops, we have 2 of them now open. So this one has it. This one now has it. And now for this one, we will be saying update content. Perfect. So now we can say get report. Let's go back to launch. We say source report and target, and then we can switch to JSON and target. Perfect. Okay, let's explain the modes a bit more up top here. So let's go ahead. The step provides two interaction modes. Let's do get report content. Enables you to select a SAS Visual Analytics report from SAS content, and its content will be written to the selected JSON file. Now let's please note that the JSON file will be fully replaced during this process, and it will be created for you if it doesn't exist. And then we have the update report content. Enables you, let's put a comma to indicate that we are kind of explaining what each means. Okay, enables you to update to update the contents of a SAS Visual Analytics report with the contents of a JSON file located on the SAS server. Oh, we should to the selected JSON file on the SAS server. We don't want to allow people to write these JSON files into SAS content, just because the whole idea behind this step is to save stuff to SAS server so you can version it using Git. So that's the only reason why I'm doing that. Please note that the content of the report will be fully replaced by the content of the JSON file. Okay, let's hit save on that. Let's go to our program and let's do the following. We have a couple of to-dos here. So the first one is we need to, let's do it, to-do, check mode and interact accordingly. Second, check that the correct SAS content versus SAS server is selected. And then we also have to implement the update process. Okay, so let's also do just a put all, just to see all the variables in here. Let's hit save. And let's go ahead and from the custom step menu, we search for VA and we are going to open this one up. So we are going to select get report content. Let's select our report here, SAS content, users, then we have to scroll to my username. There we are, my folder. And then we want our car sales report. And then let's select the JSON file from SAS server. And we are actually, what we can do, just to prove it, we could select the file, but of course you can also overwrite that here. So now we have our baseline. So let's see, just to get an understanding here, how that data is translated from this UI into our step. So I'm gonna be opening this up into a new browser tab just so we have a bit more screen real estate here. And let's search for underscore GRC underscore. So we have our mode selector, and we can see, let's jump down where the actual variables are listed. There we are. So we have our mode selector, so we can filter on that, and then we can see get source JSON, get source report, get target JSON, and you can see we have these SAS content : and then we get our value in here. So let's start working with that piece. So let's go back in here and let's go ahead and update our code. So the first step we want to do is if at, let's just grab the variable from here, is equal to get content. We can actually also split them. Let's not do horizontal, so vertical. And we can minimize this piece here. So we can also do something like this, just so we have everything side by side. And then do end. And then the other one is, let's just do another if statement and say update content. And then we are just going to do put equal, and we are going to grab this one and this one, and then down here we are going to do the same thing again, just with the other one. So our source JSON, and then we have our target report. Okay, let's hit save and let's launch this. So on this one, let's just jump here. Users. Where's my user? There we go. My folder. And then we have our car sales data report. Then we jump to SAS server and hit up our JSON, and let's run this. And now we should be seeing, there we go, we see SAS content and our SAS server. So perfect. Now we know we are in the right operating mode, so we can start bringing in this stuff. Now the first thing we have to be doing is we have to split up these pieces and check for that everything is inside of SAS content. So what we are actually going to be doing is maybe we turn all of that into a macro here, so we can do more nested testing for each one. So let's say macro GRC get main macro. We don't need any input here. We're gonna say mend and then pull in our GRC macro. So now we have that piece. then in here, let's put in this piece and actually indent everything nicely. Then we have to call our macro, main macro. And then we also should start to think about cleaning up after ourselves, just so we don't leave any artifacts in the user session. The content that is created by the UI of the custom step actually takes care of that for us. We don't have to worry about it, but anything we create during the code, we should be cleaning up ourselves. So I'm just making sure to delete this macro from the code again already. So now we have our two different modes. So let's go ahead and say we now need to split up our content pieces. Now for this, let's do this up top, and let's actually grab the value we had in here. So just so we have our example piece. So we are going to be saying let, and we have that here. And now I'm just gonna pull in a snippet again. You can find this snippet also in the on the custom step repository where we looked at the beginning. And now this is just here, so we can split up the file and the folder, and also check for the file name. So we get the file name, we get the folder path, and the second folder path is actually the, we'll just take a look at all of those in a second here. So we have to check, is it a SAS content one for GRC report? So let's update all of these. And then we can leave all of that stuff. Now here it's doing everything into call simput to check is content. I'm gonna rename that macro variable to be GRC, and actually let me do that everywhere. I don't want this to be capitalized. I want this to be lowercase. Okay, we have all of that. So we have SAS content, GRC content, then we can do simput, and this is already turning stuff into a file name statement, which in my case I don't want. What I want is call simput, and then we have GRC source path, and that is equal to the folder path, the strip folder path piece. And then the second one, let's just copy, and we're going to put the file name here. Well, let's do it. That should still not be 32. And let's grab just file name. Okay, we don't care about this piece. Oh, we shouldn't be doing this. We should say, okay, if mode is equal to GRC is content, then we do that. Otherwise, we won't be caring about it. So we don't need this variable, actually, because what we are going to be doing is, if it's not in SAS content, we are going to be doing the following. We're going to say put log, and then we're going to say error. The source report is not located in SAS content. And we're going to say abort 42, just so we have an abort code. So let's actually run all of that. And let's afterwards say put equals GRC source path. And then also do our file name. So let's run this. So now we have user, my folder, and we have car sales report. Perfect. So we can now take this piece and go over to our report content and say, okay, in this piece, these are the two macro variables that we will be caring about. So let's make sure everything is aligned nicely. And this is for the first piece. Should we probably should be writing a macro for this, right? Because otherwise we would be, let's see. Before we do this ourselves, let's go to the custom step repo and see if there isn't already a snippet available for us to do this. Codegen snippets, code samples, and then check SAS server SAS content. Okay, that's just doing what we were doing, but we want more than this. Changing SAS options, lib name, nope, I don't see anything here. Let's take a look around. In the template there, we didn't see anything there. In the docs, and let's see SAS coding best practices, if there's anything here. Nope. Okay, so let's think about this. What we want is a macro that would return, we would have to, as inputs. Well, let's have a think here. We want as inputs, we want the variable that contains our path/file name. We need to provide the mode or the server type. So SAS content versus SAS server that we want. So let's say target. And then we need to specify variable name for path on and variable name for file name. Is that right? Does that sound good to us? That does sound good to us. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep brainstorming on this and say macro grc, and then we say util to indicate it's a utility function, and then what do you say, selector split, and then we are, or let's say check selected item, and then we have our grc input variable. Next up, whoops, we have the grc target server type. We have grc path variable name and grc file name variable. Maybe we just do variable and drop that. Okay, we'll do amend immediately and pick out the name here. Whoops. So Now we want to pull in our data step. And let's indent it. So we still have the same here, but we don't have this piece in here. Rather, we now have this piece. But what happens here? What happens here if this is itself a macro variable? So what we need to be doing is a double up on this, and we need to put that here as well. So let's do this and replace it here and here. Next up, we are handling the different modes. So we are going to be replacing this and going to say, instead of mode, we are calling this server type. It's much more descriptive. And then we are saying it should be the value of this macro variable. And then in the next step here, we don't want this name, we want our new name here. And here we want this name in here. Oops, forgot to do the ampersand. Now, of course, our error message isn't good anymore. It's not located in our target server type. Okay, so that's our macro. So let's go ahead and call it. And we are going to be inputting Wait a second. We don't need to double up here. I don't think that's necessary. Let's see. So we are going to be inputting this value. Next up, our server type is SAS content. Next up, our path variable we are going to be calling, and let's just do a _1 just so we can test this and we don't overwrite anything we already have. So let's see what we get. Because that is only scoped, so we have to, oh wait, let's think about this. Let's put it in here. I have the suspicion that we only created them in local scope in the macro, but I just want to make sure I'm right. Yeah. So we need to make sure that we go in here and say in the global macro variable scope, we now want our two names to be available. So let's do this. Whoops. Okay, let's rerun our macro. Oh wait, let's take the put here as well. And there we are. Okay, so now we have a utility macro we can make use of in our code, in our step. So let's jump over into our step, and let's actually go back to single again. View, because now we don't need that. So now we are going to add our utility macro up top, and let's add a note above it. Utility macro to check the correct server type was selected, plus return the variables, the file path and file name as macro variables. Okay, let's hit save here for a second. Oh, let's make sure we also clean that one up. I like to clean up in the order that I create, so I'll just add it above it. So in here, we now can get rid of this stuff. And we now say we are going to call our utility macro, and we will be calling it twice. So first up is our GRC source path that we want to be in SAS content. Oh no, it's not source path, it's, what is it? Source report, that is it. Then we want this to be GRC source path, and we want our source file. And then for the second one, the second one now is our target variable. Oh, wait, I took the wrong one again. Target JSON. This one should be in SAS server. And now we have GRC target path and GRC target file name. Whoops, I don't need to put an ampersand, I need a percent sign here. Let's just make sure that we will also get our variables here. So let's double up on those and say target path file name. And since we are creating variables in here, let's also do a cleanup step. And we're going to say simdel, and that's going to be source path, source file name, GRC target path, and GRC file name. Just because we introduce them into the global scope, we want to make sure we have everything locked down. So let's hit save again. Let's click launch. And let's actually just copy paste this time over. Up. And let's hit run. GRC source report target, we did those. Now we get the differentiated pieces down here. Perfect. So everything works as expected. So now we can go ahead and remove, let's remove these two. We don't need those anymore. So let's remove that line. Okay, now we can get to the actual work. So we are checking the mode correctly. We are checking the correct SAS content piece. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and pull in our code from here. But we are going to do this step by step. We are going to take it slow. So let's first grab the first step And we always need to indent this. So we have our file. Now we called this out.tf. I don't like that anymore because now we have grc, but that eats up 5 of our 8 names. So the first one is report folder path. Maybe we should also put a note up here to explain. -grc is short for get report content. Then we now introduced RFP. RFP is short for report folder path. Explanation of abbreviations in the code. And let's turn this into a list. I'm sure we will be introducing more as time goes on. So now we have grcf. We need to replace that all over the place. Okay, so we have our file name. Then we have the API call. Now here, I think, because we are actually moving into more of a production type scenario, we want to actually indicate the API endpoint documentation for the endpoint. Let's leave that here. And then we have our report path. Now this is no longer called report path, but rather it's called the source path. So we'll be putting that up here. We still have a GET request, we still have this, and then we have our JSON. Now we grab our report parent folder ID. So let's give this the grc tag here as well. And because we're creating a macro variable, I'll just make sure to also delete it. Now, since we are also creating file names here and lib names, we should also be cleaning up those. So let's do that immediately. Since we're introducing them, we're going to clear first the lib name and then the file name. Okay, so we have updated the document, the naming convention from before, and we have retrieved our ID. So say first step, find the source folder in SAS content and retrieve its ID. Then, or maybe we should do one. So like this, first step. Next up is the second step. Let's get our code. We have a new file name, we do another API call, and we grab this piece. So let's go in here. Let's indent. We don't need to indent this one. There we go. So we have our file name. Now we have out.tr. So we are renaming that to _grc. And we are naming this one. We are getting the report. Oh no, we're getting the folder member. FM folder members. Okay, let's go up here and say FM is short for folder members. Okay, grcfm. We need to replace that. We need to replace that. We need to replace that. Now we introduce our report URI. Let's prefix it with grc and make sure we delete it. Now we have the report name in here, but we are actually calling that the source file name. So we have that. And then we need to be making sure we are again cleaning out, our newly created library and the file name we created. Okay. So step 2 is identify or filter the folder members and to only the source report and retrieve its ID. It's URI. We are not retrieving its ID. Then we are doing an API call. So documentation for the endpoint, and then this one is get folder members. Okay, perfect. And now we have our third step. Third step is back to our code. Oh, okay. Here we're getting the via host URL, so we need to do that. We will always be doing that. So let's actually do this as a first step in our code because we need that for both modes, I'm going to assume. So let's just do this and let's make sure we say local grc via host, and this is going to be our via host here. So let's also update that in all of these pieces. Okay. Do we need anything else? Not right now. So now we're back to the third step. Let's clean up a bit or give us space. So now we need our 2 file name statements. We need our API call. Oh, we didn't do any API call checks. So okay, let's go in here. Let's first add everything. So this one here is our GRC report content temp RCT. So let's say here RCT is short for report content temporary. So that's that one. Then we have our GRC report content permanent RCP. RCP is short for report content permanent. Okay, let's hit save just because why not? So this one here should be the output of this one, and then also the value of this, and GCRP should be this piece. We are not introducing libname statements, so we just need to clear 2 file name statements here. So the first one we are assigning is this one, so we are designing it first. And then we pick our second one and we say clear. Okay. Now here, this piece can't stay like that. So we need to update this. And this is now going to be our target path / our target file name. So step 3 is copies the content of the report to the target JSON file. Then we don't need this anymore. We are only going to leave error request. We're only checking the last one. That would mean that in the worst case, if it can't find all the other stuff in between, we would be making 2 API calls in vain. I think I can live with that. I think the only one the user actually cares about is this piece down here. And we are going to say request was not successful. Please make sure you have selected a SAS Visual Analytics report. And then note request was successful. And then we are done. We are then done with this first piece, which is awesome. So let's launch. Let's pull out our values here again and hit run. Failed. So let's go through this. We have 2 OKs. So everything should be fine. So let's see. This was just created. Nope, it wasn't. So let's delete it just so we are sure. Let's rerun. Okay, that is all good. So we are getting that 2 variables, the report URI and the parent folder URI couldn't be deleted. So let's check on that. This is this one. Oh, we don't need to delete those because they are a local scope within the macro. That's right. Yeah, we can remove that. We don't need to do what we don't need to do. So with that will remove our 2 macro warnings here. So that is all fine then. Maybe we should, I like doing things explicitly. So maybe we should just go ahead and add those 2 up there as well, just so we know they are local. But yeah, it's nice to see that someone put in the thought, I think, and documented these things. So here we are. Here we are within our macro. We have everything cleaned up. So now the only thing that is left is for us to implement the updating process. What do we need for the updating process? We have already identified we will be needing that piece. So as a first step, I'm sure it will come in handy to, again, check things. So let's just do that. But this time we have our source. Maybe I should actually switch. No, let's keep it like that. We have our source, our source JSON. We have, that should be on SAS server, and the other piece should be in SAS content. We can keep the source path and the source file name. And then we say target report, and we have the same thing there. So that's awesome. Can remove these 2 put statements, and we can actually steal this piece. So let's say cleanup. Put that. Meaning we already have our target variables that we probably will need. If not, it's not that big of a deal. So what we now need to do is we need to learn how to update the report. So we can close this, we can close, we can still look at our report here in a second, but let's close out everything else. So the report that we have, let's go to the URL and point of it and see what we have in here. So we have the content one, and there is a put to update content statement. Okay, so let's find that in the actual documentation. We can also close out this one, visualization, report, report content, and then we have saves the report content, save and return report content. We don't want to return it, we only want to update the content. Well, let's go in here. So it says saves the report content, does not return the stored content, and e-tag is not required for the initial save, but it is required for all subsequent saves. In some situation where an accept type header is automatically generated, setting will achieve the same effect as omitting it. Okay. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to start playing with this. So we are going to close this one out, and we will be putting all of this into comments. See, and that's why I don't like multi-line comments anywhere. We had all of that checked anyways. Okay, we are done here. So now we can talk about the update report content. So we already know the endpoint we are going to be using for this. And for this, we need report ID. We saw that up top here. It's mentioning the e-tag, which we will get to when we get to it, e-tag. And we need our JSON, which is here in this data piece. Okay, so that is what we need. In order to getting report ID, we have to do the path to folder member ID trip again. So should we potentially also pull that into its own macro? And then we need to get e-tag, and then we update report. So the first thing we're going to be doing is, let's go to Explore and Visualize, and let's close out these reports, and let's say we are going to create a copy of this, save. We're going to replace that copy. And now let's say we will delete this piece here. So our copy now, let's open up the original. The original report has this interaction with a bar chart in it, while the copy only has the key value pairs up top. And we want to restore our copy with the original content. I'm just pretending I'm moving between environments here, but you can imagine the same piece. So we will need to let's think about this. We could easily pull all of these pieces out into another utility macro, right? So we could say, because then all we would need to return, let's think about this. all this would need to so we could at least do the first two steps. That is where we are similar. In these two steps, we are exactly similar to each other. We just have bad names for things right now, right? No, we have report folder path and folder members. So we could turn this into its own utility macro. Let's do that. Let's think of that. I like that idea. So we don't have to duplicate code. Macro, grc, util, report, get report URI, get report URI. We don't need any inputs. Let's put our code in here. And let's do a ment on this. And everywhere we are one line too far in. Let's run that down. Okay, almost there. So maybe now we also remove this step reference and just say find this. Then we say filter for this. And then now what we now need to do is we now need to actually introduce them into global scope. So what we didn't do before, we now have to be doing so that we can actually interact with them. Because this is what we want back. And then we need to bring in the cleanup crew here. So the first 4 we now need to bring into here. Now, we call this source path, but okay. Do we need macro variables in here? I almost feel like we do. Because maybe, yeah, we are going to call these grc temp source path and grc temp source file name so that we can map them. And then we are just gonna put this one here. Oh no, not source. We shouldn't be calling them source. We're going to be calling them grc folder path and grc file name path. Whoops, let's do an underscore path. So this is the folder path and this one is the file name. Yep. That makes a lot more sense to me. Okay, let's bring over our little macro. Let's bring this up at the top. we run it after the other one, so I'm gonna logically also put it underneath this one. And then utility macro to retrieve the URI of a SAS Visual Analytics report by providing its path in SAS content and name. And let's also make sure we delete it. Sysmac delete. Okay, and then, right, let's actually quickly do a temporary copy of the code in here. So we are going to remove, this is a bit scary, but let's do it. Let's remove this. We are now saying copy, and then in here we are going to be calling our utility script, and we are going to be providing it our source path and our source file name. Right. I think so. That should be fine. That should be. We can also save another line here. Okay, let's try this. Let's launch again. Let's pull out our report. Now we can also check that we no longer have warnings in our code. Whoops. Attempted to global a name which exists in the local environment. Okay, let's see. Let's go back in here. What did we do wrong? Oh, yes. We did this before. So now sometimes being too cautious. So let's do this. So yes, we now need to delete them there again. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That error made sense because we had tried to be good citizens by declaring them explicitly as being local and then trying to overwrite them as global scope. Okay, we have an error there. Wait, we should have deleted our file. Let's check. Oh yeah, we are double deleting the files at the moment, so that, yeah, we need to clean that up. So we no longer need these 4 statements because we're cleaning up in the macro. Okay, so now we can translate all of that back down into here. We need to add this piece, and we need to pull in this macro in here. And then, but we are not saying source path this time, we are saying the target path and the target file name. Okay, so we now have already the URI of our report. We have of course our source JSON that we can be working with. So let's check our nodes that we have. We have the ID, we have our JSON, we got the report ID, we introduced our additional macro, so we can remove that. We can remove the report ID, and we can remove the JSON. So now we only need the e-tag, and we will learn how to get the e-tag. For that, we are actually jumping to my repository here, that already provides us with a macro to retrieve the e-tag. If we look up here, you can see how this can be made use of. So let's get that macro. And we're just going to be pulling that into SAS Studio. So now we are going to rename this to GRC, just giving it that prefix, just so there is no chance of overwriting anything anywhere. We don't need to get the via host, we have that already. Then we are introducing this global resource e-tag, which we're going to be naming to GRC resource e-tag. And it calls for a resource URI, which we are going to be removing because we have a global variable that contains that. So let's keep going. We don't need that piece. So then we are going to say GRC header out. So we're going to just do HO here. Then we can remove that. We are doing a generic call. Now our via host is called, oh, see, this is where we almost screwed up. We almost didn't update our variables here. Good that we caught that in time here as well. Then our resource URI, that piece is called GRC report URI. And actually here I see, why do I make this one global? I don't need this in the global scope. I only need one. I only need the URI in the global scope. So let's fix that. Let's remove this piece here. And let's also remove it from here. And then up top, we remove this. We only want one in the global scope. We don't need the other ones. Perfect. Again, reducing, cleaning up is part of the process here we are developing. So we have our GRC report URI. We are using that. Now we are using this piece. We are checking was found, and only then we are extracting. Okay, we can leave that. The report could not be found. We can update that. Check that the report, to update the report. And then we have our resource e-tag. This is being written here. The in file we updated to be grcho. Then this is all inside of a statement piece, and then we have to clear it. So that should be it in terms of our helper macro. So let's get back in here. We need this last, and we only even need it for one specific piece. So we now need to define HO is short for header out. Okay, then GRC retrieve e-tag. Let's sysmac delete. And we are very close to finishing this. So we have retrieve e-tag. Okay, we now have also our e-tag. We got our e-tag. So now the only piece left is to do an update content. And the update content piece now, we can do that. We're going to do this manually first, and we do that by going back into Visual Analytics, and we're just going to be grabbing the URI of our report here. We can also just grab it from this piece, and let's go in here, just check it. So this is our sales copy report. So this is going to be our report URI. Let's cancel, go back into SAS Studio. Let's go in here and let's leave that piece here. Let's take a look at the documentation to see how we can make use of it. So that's how it's being done. Let's put this below. We are going to be pulling in this piece. That's the input to our macro. The GRC retrieve macro. Then we have our, what is the out of this? We have as a file name, we have GRC JSON content, and that is the path to our sales report. We will have to update that in the code with the reference to the macro variable, but for here this is fine. And then there is an out statement. I don't actually care for an out, I only want the in. So we can remove that piece. Or maybe we do in JSON content. And then we have the via host, and we are going to be using the reports/content. So that's good. So we can remove this piece here, because we are going to be saying we are going to use our endpoint that we have up top there, and then say /content. Whoops, don't need a double slash. We're going to put this piece here and pull that down here. SAS services. We can accept this. Then we have the if match. This is where our E tag goes. Well, let's remove that piece. And we are going to, since our macro variable is called GRC resource E tag, we are going to be doing this piece. And now if we run this, everything should be working. Nope. Oh, yeah. We forgot that we changed how the macro worked. So we are actually saying this. See that? That is already better in my opinion. Anyways, so we do that. And then we don't say this, we say let. And then we can also already update this piece here, which is nice. Okay. Now we only need to rerun that piece. GRC via host not resolved, that is correct. We only did that in the macro. Remember we called ours via host. Let's make sure that we pull in that piece here. Oh wait, no, we should put that above the E tag call. And then do this again. Physical file does not exist. Oh, did we delete that? And just didn't refresh? Oh yeah, we did. Okay, let's run again. But let's see. Refresh. What did we do here? Error was not successful. Where did we introduce? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's save here for a second. Let's go to launch. Let's grab our variables. So we shouldn't see any warning or anything in the log. There we go. Now we have our JSON again. And now we can finally, rerun everything. Let's check. 415 unsupported media. Okay, that means our update content, yep, it wants a specific piece here. Probably wants to know a bit more about itself. So we are going to say, let's use this piece. We should be fine just rerunning it. 204, no content, which is exactly the response we would be expecting. So let's go to Visual Analytics. Let's reopen the report. And there we are. Perfect. So our copy, we're still in the copy, got updated from that other JSON file. So let's click delete here. Let's save again. And let's go back. So we can now introduce we have the macro in already. So we now, and we didn't change anything about the macro. We don't need this one, we don't need that. We call the E tag, and then we do all of these pieces. Perfect. So then we're going in here. Let's insert everything. We are retrieving the E tag. Then we need to define our file name. Here is short for in JSON content. Can remove our to-do. Let's go through the E tag. Yeah, I don't think we changed anything in here. We are introducing that into the global scope, so we need to make sure we are deleting it as well. And then this piece here is actually our source path / source file name. Then we are going to update this to say documentation. What did we call this always in these calls? Documentation for the endpoint. For the endpoint. Let's pull this out. Okay, and everything is looking great. Here we only need to clean up our file name. And now we are golden, or we should be golden. So what I want to do now is let's reset our SAS session just to make sure everything is cleaned up in the background. Let's delete our JSON that we have on disk. Let's go to Visual Analytics just to check, okay, the copy one is, refresh, reopen, just to see. Okay, it's still the kind of broken version. Let's go ahead and say launch. We are first checking it in the get content mode. And we are grabbing all of these here. Say run. Aha. Oh, I see. That is great. We did not do things correctly. No, we did. Is this SAS content? Okay, so what went wrong here? whole bunch of stuff. Report parent folder ID not resolved. What? Oh, see, that's the tricky piece here. We had been using those implicit variables. That's why it's helpful to reset your SAS session from time to time. So let's hit launch again. Let's copy over everything. And let's hit run. Report URI. See, there's more of this stuff in there. Good, good, good that we are checking. Where else is it? Okay, all other places it does say GRC in front. Let's hit launch again. Perfect. Our pretty printed JSON. And now I actually want to add another one that we are going to be setting into update mode. So we have to put our folder now below our report below, and we actually need to edit this to say dash copy. And let's hit run. This is looking great. So let's jump into Visual Analytics. Hit reopen. Pew, 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 pew. We did it. We implemented a custom step that helps us getting content from and to, from SAS content into the file system, where we then could use the Git interface inside of SAS Studio or one of the custom steps or any other utility that you like to integrate with. Let's actually go ahead and add a final kind of piece to this, just so that the user kind of gets a message that everything went fine. So let's do a title, and let's say the content of the selected report is available in your target location. What? Wait, we need a bit of a, we should maybe have like a very small data set that we can then immediately delete. So let's do data work GRC, GRC user message. And we are going to say file name or file created file is equal to, and then we are just going to grab this piece here and gonna say run. Then we are going to say proc print data is equal to work. And we're just gonna put this baby here, and we don't want to print the ops. I'm gonna say run quit, and then let's reset the title as well. And then we should also do proc data sets library lib is work. I'm gonna say no list. So run quit down here, and then delete this piece. Okay. And then maybe let's also do that down here, but let's do it like that, where we say if, and then we are going to grab the, oh no, yeah, let's do it like that. Check the response. We're gonna, we are going to do check the response piece is unequal to 2 or 4. Please make sure you have selected a Visual Analytics report. The request was successful. So then the content, oh, we should put a colon down there, and then we say the selected report has been updated with the content of the selected JSON. Well, let's maybe not put the colon. Create file. Source report. I'll also do that. And we can actually just do grc source path slash source file name. Yep. And the selected report has been updated. We have a title and a title, but we still need our data set that we will be printing here. Let's do that. And then we say source file, and then target report, and we'll just take that, put that here, and that, put that here. Yeah. Oh wait, we need to remove that piece. That was just an artifact. And then we also need to do the cleanup. Let's launch. One final check here. Let's get the report. Let's get the JSON. Let's hit run. Oh, well, we didn't quote the text correctly. Oh yeah, we forgot the semicolon at the end. That's correct. Let's see, we had the JSON last, so now we have the content. And let's hit run again. Created file, source content. Ah, no, yeah, doesn't matter. We are just playing now. Perfect. So the only thing left now is to create the about part. Let's do that real quick. Let's start with the changelog. Now wait, first let's clean up. See, there's nothing left to do up here. We still need to provide something here, and we forgot to add util here. Always clean up. Always clean up. So we also need to make sure then when we call the e tag here, we update that, and we update here. Then we need to provide a comment, utility macro to retrieve the e tag of a report. We have that. Now let's go in here and let's add the versions. So here, version 1 today is the 23rd of August 2025. For documentation, we are going to be pulling out our different endpoints. So let's scroll through the top, say this one. And here it might again make sense. Let's optimize vertical space. Up and documentation. Let's go in here. Let's say here this is the documentation piece. Next up, we have this endpoint. And then finally, we have, we need to add that endpoint as well. Wait, what was that? Oh yeah, we can just copy this documentation link, obviously, to this place. And then we're done with documentation. Prerequisites. We tested this on VIA version stable 2025.07. And then this isn't the template step, this is the VA get report content step. The custom sampler performs provides the ability to either retrieve the content of a SAS Visual Analytics report and store it in a JSON file on the SAS server for Git versioning, or it can be used to update a SAS Visual Analytics report with the contents of a JSON file stored on the SAS server. There we are. Let's remove all of these pieces. And let's also add this text here to the description of the object, just so that we have more details. And now this custom step is done. It could be used to put all of that content up into the custom step repository. For that, I will have to write some README, take some screenshots and stuff like that. I will do that offline, but I hope you enjoyed this almost 2.5 hour long stream going through step by step on how to create these custom steps, talking it through some of the pieces. You saw me restructuring my code a bunch of times and building out utility macros as I went along, cleaning up after myself and really implementing a utility driven by our API endpoints. I hope you enjoyed this and see you next stream. Bye bye.